Mr. Butler, there have been reports made about you which I'm investigating.
What sort of reports?
Mr. Butler, there have been reports of you abusing your cattle.
You can call me Johan.
The Lonely Farmer was our fifth film, and we've made 5 films after that, but for some reason this is probably my favorite film that I've ever made. I'll try to go over in this video as to why this film stuck with me so much and why I love it so much. 1-4, take 1.
I see the boom. El brazo, veo el brazo del boom, señor.
So the first thing I want to talk about is sound. In this production, I got humbled by the aspect of the craft that I respected the least at the time. And I learned that even though it's a part of the craft that is invisible, if the sound is recorded well, not a lot of people talk about it. And unfortunately for me, not understanding the importance of it led me to make mistakes that eventually made the sound not live up to the quality of the rest of the film. And I'm going to go through exactly what we did with the sound and what mistakes we made, and how you can avoid doing that. The very first mistake I made was just thinking that I could save money by renting sound equipment and getting a friend to record the sound without having a sound professional. And of course this came back to bite me in the end. Now, I had a very good friend, Yanis, on the production, who thankfully agreed to do the sound recording, but he was also tasked with such things as production assistance and gaffing. So you can already imagine him doing all of that, not being a professional sound recordist, what the end result would be. The next thing that I unfortunately did was, after renting sound equipment, I didn't take the time to test out the equipment. For some reason, the times that you don't test it out are the times when you should have tested them out. And unfortunately, only once we had wrapped everything and I had the time to listen to some of the recorders, I realized that the boom was muffled and there was a clicking noise in one of the mics. So one actor had a decent mic, one actor didn't, and the boom mic was not working properly either. And the difficulty for me was trying to make both of the actors sound the same in the editing room. In the final edit, the sound, as you can imagine, was just dragging the whole production down. And we spent almost 2 months trying to repair the sound. As Ron Howard puts it, every project finds a way to break your heart. And I think the sound is how this project broke my heart. One lesson that I did learn, I'm not sure if it was a good lesson or a bad lesson, but something that I did learn was that, yes, we had one lav mic that was working fine and one that wasn't. But the thing with audiences is that they're not going to pay too much attention to the quality of sound if the change between the sounds is not too drastic. And what I mean by that is that instead of trying to make the bad sound as good as the good sound, what I also had to do is to make the good sound slightly worse. In that way, both of the mics from the beginning of the production sounded as similar as they could, and this didn't allow for any sudden spikes or jumps in the sound quality, which eventually would have brought the audience out. And the thing that I learned from this production is that good sound is the floor of the production, and it's not something added on top that just makes it better. It's something that you need to have. It's as important as the video. Even if you have bad video or shaky video, you can get away with it if you have clean sound. The beauty of sound is that it can carry your production even if other things are falling apart. I think if you're making productions, and this is something that I've started doing, is that you have to start thinking of sound as the architecture of the piece. It's a foundational element, and it's not something that you can add on top or you can fix in post. Not only does it build the story, but it's also the emotional architecture of the film. If you don't believe me, you should read Walter Murch's In the Blink of an Eye as he speaks about sound. And if you still don't believe either of us, go make a production where the sound is not so good, and you will have the same experience as I have.
Mr. Butler, there have been reports made about you which...
Sorry, can we reset, man? There. No, don't cut it. Let's do it. Yeah, close the door.
So I think a big reason as to why this production really stuck with me and why it's still one of my favorite films I've done so far is because at a certain point it became not a production that I did by myself, but a collaboration between interested minds, and everybody involved in this production brought something to the production that kind of elevated it from being just something that I thought up in my own room to something that we all shared at the end. For this production, Patrizio was my cinematographer, and we had already finished working on Broadband Service Provider recently. So I had built up this rapport with him where I could trust him with all the decisions, and we worked together on this production from the very beginning of the storyboarding all the way to the final edit. And I think having this collaborator from the very beginning to the end was a huge help, not only to me, but to the production creative output that we both created here. We were able to talk about the final edits, the choices in sound, composition design, music. It was just an amazing experience working with another collaborator, a collaborator that cared about the production. I think that's something that is the sort of the holy grail of creative work, is this collaborative effort. And from the outset, this made the film the first creative shared output that I've created. So every film before this was my idea, put on paper and then eventually put on screen. But here, it finally felt like something we created together. And I think not only did it change the final output, but it also changed the approach. Before this, I saw the script as the end product that I needed to see on screen. But during this production and after it, I started to take the script as a starting point, seeing where the production can go from there. And I think allowing that to happen really elevates every piece of work that you make. Yes, you can start with something, but then allowing people to come in and have their experiences shape the film really makes something much better than you can cook up by yourself.
And action.
Don't arrest me, officer.
I think this leads us on to the next point in this discussion, and that's as to why I felt so comfortable for the first time in my filmmaker career to essentially just steal compositions, steal shots from other productions. I actually, for the first time, realized that we all, as artists, live in this lineage of artistic expression. Nothing we make is original. And as Goddard says, it's not where you take ideas from, it's where you take the ideas to. And I think that really kind of encompasses the creative approach I took to this production. I think for years I was preoccupied and concerned with being creative, and in my mind the word creative meant that everything I chose, everything I created had to come from my own ideas. I couldn't borrow, I couldn't steal anything. And only here did I realize that notion is ridiculous. We are all a composition of our external world. We're all influenced by everything we see, we hear, all the art, media we consume. And what I started to do is to think, which filmmakers do I admire and why? And which films spoke to my idea of this film? And what could I take from those? So I decided to start watching more keenly shots of productions that I really liked. I think probably the biggest influence on this film is Banshees of Inisherin. And you can definitely see influences in terms of composition, in terms of acting in this production of that production. But the beautiful thing is, even if you try to steal something, you won't be able to steal it perfectly. So no matter what you do, you're still going to end up being creative. I think studying frames and different compositions by different artists not only gave me confidence to copy that, but also it gave me the ability to understand the choices behind those compositions and how did they actually achieve those. Trying to achieve those compositions gave me the idea of limitations behind them as well. One big reference that you can probably see from a lot of the shots of this production is Wes Anderson, and specifically Wes Anderson's planimetric cinematography. And you can see this from a lot of the shots inside the house and in the foyer, where the farmer is not so much explored through his dialogue with the other characters, but also through what's in the shot and what items he has there.
And action.
I think another reason as to why this production really stuck with me and why I really love the finished product because of one specific actor, James, the actor playing Johan, the farmer. And it was such an amazing experience casting him and working with him. I think from the very first time I saw his audition tape, I knew that this is the person I had to cast for this role. I knew that he would be able to play it perfectly, and he didn't disappoint. Everything I threw his way, he was able to take it on and not only do it as I suggested it, but also bring it to a new level, add new things to it. And I think possibly this is what made me enjoy working with him so much. Choices like this will make directors love you as an actor, and will make them want to work with you again and again and again. One thing that I absolutely loved about him as well was that James, as an actor, has special skills in sleight of hand and magic, and we talked about it in the production process, and we both agreed it would be interesting to add this as a skill that Johan the farmer has. So I think this is the first time when I changed the script based on an actor's skills. Not only were we telling the story through the dialogue and through the acting, but also a lot of the visual cues and the visual choices were doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Another quick aspect that I want to talk about a little bit is the location and how choosing the right location can influence the project. What was great for us is that the location that my friend gave to us was already perfect for the production. And I think it influenced the film not only visually, but also how cast and crew members responded to the place as the production was in progress. I think it's very important to realize and to consider the point of how much of the story is told through the location that you choose. So let's say if you have a shoot coming in a month and you just can't find the location, maybe it's okay to postpone the production to find a better location. It's choices like these that seem like you have to compromise, that once set will determine the rest of the production. This farm where we filmed the film was amazing because it acted as a lived space, as a lived environment. Having such a great location made set design redundant because it was already there. Everything we needed was already there.
Hold on, don't action. I see you, Janice.
It gave us time to think about other things and explore the space as it already existed for the actors. But of course, there were some funny aspects as well. This is, of course, a farm, and farms have animals. So we did have actually a lot of sheep, and they wandered onto the set quite a few times, and we tried to corral them, tried to move them off the set and off the shot. So sometimes part of being a director not only involves directing people, but also directing sheep. And I think that's something that made the production a little bit longer, but it was quite a funny experience as well. And I think all of this is to say that picking the location and picking the props is part of the texture of the film, and you really have to take your time to choose these correctly, because once chosen, you can't really adjust them. Everything that you choose tells a story, and you have to be careful with what story you're trying to tell. But thankfully, because of this, half of our cinematography was already done before we even started talking about blocking and composition. So now we go on to one of the core tenets as to why I think this production was miles ahead of everything we've done previously. And obviously that's cinematography and the composition and the framing. One question that I asked myself before the production for the cinematography was, when does the framing of the shot stop being observational and starts telling part of the story? And I think that's a huge part of what I tried to do in this production, is not only tell the story through dialogue and acting and props, but also through how we moved the camera, how we positioned the camera, the composition. This was my first film where frames became narrative. They weren't just observational, they weren't just follow the lead, they told part of the story. And this way, at the same time, we do less, but also do much more with our compositions. Before, in all of our productions, what we did is we essentially just followed the main actor. I think it was based a lot on my previous experience as a documentary director, having this approach of a fly-on-the-wall filmmaking. This was the time where we took a step back from that and allowed cinematography to play a pivotal role in creating the story. Here the camera shaped meaning alongside the dialogue and the script. A beautiful example of this is that at the beginning of the film, the camera is static, it's on sticks, and it goes all the way like this up to the point where Johan finally loses control, and we have this transition to handheld shot to indicate that his world has become a bit more unstable, he's not sure what's going to happen. And we go on like this until the very end where he finally regains some control, and he learns that he, of course, managed to achieve what he wants to achieve, and we come back to sticks, to a static shot. And through this arc we sort of explore not only the storyline but also the emotional story of Johan. This film as a whole was framed as a thriller from the beginning, and only later do you find out that it's really just about male loneliness and friendship. We have another shot where Johan brings the policeman into the kitchen, but before he does that, they both travel through the foyer. And me and the cinematographer had a long debate whether we should include this shot because there's no dialogue, they're just walking through. But in the end, we really stuck to the ethos of this film of showing, not telling. And I think what's beautiful about the shot and why we decided to keep it in the end is that there's so many items in this composition, in this shot, that tell a huge story about who Johan is, what he does with his free time. And once we've understood this, it was impossible not to include this shot. And through this also we discovered that you can reveal your characters without having dialogue. You can reveal them by camera composition, by camera movement, and by having things on screen or off screen. And I think this is the first time where I started to intentionally withhold information from the audience. It no longer became just an exposition piece, but it became a story worth following, and the audience hopefully wanted to find out more and more as the film progresses. Finally, one thing that I knew would be a huge part of this film is the stares and the silences between the actors. So it was interesting directing them to allow silences for longer than they felt natural between their lines, and to have these stares that are almost intimidating. And through these choices, you can tell that both of these characters are revealed more so through what they don't say than through what they say in the dialogue.
You want to stay for a bit?
I'm on duty, Mr. Butler.
And I want to take just a moment to speak about the ending of the film. There was a huge choice we had to make here at the end of the film. What happens to Johan? Does the policeman arrest him? Does it take him away? Does Johan kill the policeman? What happens? In the end, I decided to allow the friendship to blossom. And from this choice, for me especially, the idea of what Mad Potato Studios stands for grew out of. Too many films focus too much on despair, on meaninglessness, on hopelessness, on the seriousness of art. And I think they take themselves too seriously. And yes, this film deals with serious and important topics of loneliness, but we try to take a more positive approach. And I think, as Herzog says, life reveals itself to people who travel on foot. It's the same sort of idea. By focusing on the small things that matter, we can really explore life and the beauty of it.
I was the guy you phoned in.
Mr. Butler?
And just to close off, I want to end this film by saying a huge thank you to everybody who was part of this. This film still is one of my favorite films that I've ever made, and I couldn't have done it without everybody being involved in it. And I hope that the loneliness that Johan overcomes by finding a friend is something that the work that we create helps you with as well. So this is Mad Potato Studios signing off. Thank you for listening.
I hate it here.
That doesn't give you the right to waste the police's time.
I wanted someone to talk to.
Tell you what. Let's just write it off as a misunderstanding, eh?